63 years of independence, 63 years of promises, 63 years of patience. It's time for governance now. Governance now. Let's make it work.
Now, the second question about paid news. Is it journalistic corruption or is it what is it? A recent discussion in this city at which some of you were present framed it as if it was journalistic. Why do journalists surrender whatever space in return for quotes and buts? That's absolutely fraudulent. It is pinning on the journalist something that he has very little to do with. Journalistic corruption is as old as journalism. That's another question altogether. Paid news in this form is structured extortion by the media companies. My friend Karan Thapar asked me on a program, Sainath, how did the politicians seduce the media? They did. The media went around extorting money and blackmailing them. That's what happened. The first complaint of paid news by a big politician, a then Union Minister of State, now a member of the Press Council, was in Nagpur when he stopped Jaideep Ardikar of DNA and me and said, I really have to talk to you. It's also my profession. He was also a journalist and some time in the remote past. He said, they asked me, these guys asked me 20 lakhs to cover my constituency. We wrote the story. That was coverage packages and credibility discounts. That was the first of the new series. So is it journalist corruption? I say it is structured corruption by media companies. And as one journalist trapped in this called me when the controversy was going on and our stories were appearing in the Hindi, a very senior Marathi journalist called me and said, look, you're going to see my name on one of those stories. I promise you, and you know me, I did not take a single paisa for it. I was told by the editor, I need a senior journalist's name on this. It will be yours. He said, you were talking, because he heard me speak somewhere, he rang up and he said, you were talking about corruption, individual choices. He said, look, in another time, in another era, as individuals, we had the individual choice of being corrupt or not being corrupt. What choice do I have when my management tells me, your name will be on this story and there are 4 guys waiting in line for my job and another half a dozen at the newspaper door? What do I do? I'm not making any money on it. First, understand that the paid news was also extremely structured in many ways. Those of you who are journalists know there are many kinds of paid news. There's prepaid, there's postpaid, there's yet to be paid. Those candidates who lost have not settled their bills. So there's yet to be paid and some haggling which I see now and then going on saying, yaar, tumhara bill ko khatam karo na, wo uska de do na paisa. So that goes on too. Now there are 3 levels at which this worked. The first level was a huge public relations firm of famous fame. It got the big contract from big parties. It then gave them out to design agencies which then created the image, sculpted the image that the PR agency had thought of. Then it was distributed to ad agencies. There was a whole hierarchy of, embedded corruption in the whole stuff. Then the second level of it was at the regional or district level where the local big politicians struck a deal directly with the editor of the local big newspaper. Then came the Aam Aadmi tariff. All of us flooded with calls by ordinary candidates with no money, saying, "Sir, mera paid news to thoda dikhi hai na, 20,000 rupiya tak main de sakta." Okay. Now, if you didn't have money, you were wiped out. Look at Mr. Ashok Chavan's rival. He's a former minister. Does anyone know his name? He's a former minister, a highly qualified surgeon of Nanded. Nobody in Nanded could see his name. No newspaper, no TV channel would mention his name because he did not pay the money. His name is Dr. Madhav Kimhalkar. He is a highly skilled surgeon and a former Minister of State in Maharashtra. So if you did pay, you were finished. And by the way, there was an optional. By paying a little more, I can get my rival trashed in that. But mostly the rival was never mentioned. So readers didn't know who the rival was. This has very serious implications for you and me because it means that the armed army or armed power is completely priced out of the polls in terms of media coverage. There is no hope for you on that front. Paid news works for politicians because in elections it works. It's not only about elections. In elections it works because the politician could break the election spending limit many times over. It works for newspaper because it's a purely cash transaction and therefore doesn't go on to the record books and you don't pay taxes on it. There were some very wonderful things during this entire racket of paid news. How did I get all those pages? How did I get all those stories? How did we get all those data? I didn't step outside to get them after the first two stories. My house was flooded with 32 kgs of paid news packets from young journalists all across Maharashtra, sending me with translations from Marathi to English. What all was going on in their own news. What are the sectors that the Indian media are in? Let me just give you a quick run through. Aviation, agriculture, hotels, restaurants, advertising, travel agencies, agricultural machinery, traders, cement, jute, shipping, steel, aluminium, casting, chemicals, cotton, rubber, tea, coffee, tires, dairy, sugar. Real estate, let's not even get into real estate. A hell of a lot of media companies make the bulk of their revenue from real estate to the point where it's very difficult to tell fourth estate from real estate. This is not embedded journalism, it's embedded journalism. The media are now too embedded in every other sector for you to treat them as an exclusive entity. They have to be treated as any other corporate entity. Where they are a corporate business entity, they have to follow the laws that apply to other corporate business entities. Okay? And you're going to need a whole raft of new legislation, anti-monopoly, anti-corporate legislation. Without it, you're going to make changes that will be transient and that will slide back. You're going to have to go in for a whole heap of legislation that will curb monopoly. There is no escape from that, apart from all the other things that we can do, that we can discuss, that we can do, but you're going to have to take corporate monopoly. If every one of you who has the money to do it is not supporting at least 2 or 3 journals that go out of their way, put their necks on the line, and give you information at great expense to themselves and are therefore unable to run or function properly, you're not putting your money where your mouth is. Treat it as part of the larger democratic struggle. It's not just that journalists only have a right or only media people have a right to talk about the media. Every one of you has that right to take up the issue of the distortion of the Indian polity by many things that the media are doing, like paid news being a prime example. There are various forms of resistance. The coming of those 32 kilos of paid news shows me that resistance is alive.